Welcome to Built Not Burnt Out. I'm Melissa Petersen. I'm an attorney of more than 26 years, health and mindset coach, founder of the Becoming Method, longtime group fitness instructor, yoga instructor, ARC certified food addiction advocate, and mom of 10. Have you ever looked at your life and realized nothing is actually on fire anymore, but your body and mind are still acting like everything is an emergency? You're always doing, fixing, worrying, planning, taking care of everyone else, and just trying to make it through the day. That's survival mode. And I don't just understand this professionally, I've lived it. I know what it's like to carry enormous responsibility, keep functioning, keep achieving, and take care of everyone else on top of it. And eventually realize that surviving and functioning are not the same things as truly living. That experience is part of what led me to create the Becoming Method, where I help people work on their health, mindset, habits, identity, accountability, and the deeper patterns that can keep us stuck even though when we know we want to change. Today, we're going to talk about how to recognize survival mode, why you can stay stuck even after the crisis has passed, and most importantly, how to find your way out. Because you were created not just to survive in your life, you were actually created to live it. Let's get on to it. So, the topic tonight is how to stop living in survival mode. What if you're not lazy, unmotivated, inconsistent, or failing? What if your brain and body have simply gotten used to living like everything is an emergency? And that's what I want to talk about today, because I think a lot of people are walking around in survival mode and don't even realize it. And when we hear the words survival mode, we tend to picture someone going through a major crisis, maybe a divorce, a death, a serious illness, a financial disaster, a traumatic event. And yes, those kinds of experiences can absolutely put us in survival mode. But survival mode doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like waking up already thinking about everything you have to get done. It looks like immediately checking your phone. It looks like rushing from one responsibility to another. And it looks like feeling guilty whenever you sit down. It looks like constantly thinking, what's next? It looks like always needing to fix something, solve something, accomplish something, or take care of someone. Sometimes it looks like irritability. Sometimes it looks like anxiety. Sometimes it simply looks like exhaustion. Sometimes it looks like shutting down and not wanting to do anything. Sometimes it's like eating when you aren't physically hungry. Sometimes it's like forgetting to eat because you're so busy. Sometimes it looks like scrolling on your phone for an hour because your brain is too exhausted to make another decision. And sometimes it looks like being incredibly productive. And I think that's one of the reasons survival mode can be so difficult to recognize. Because a person in survival mode may actually look extremely successful from the outside. They may be working, exercising, taking care of their family, running a business, helping everyone else, checking every box. And everybody around them might be thinking, I don't know how she does it all. But inside, that person may feel like they can never stop. Because somewhere along the way, their brain learned that stopping doesn't feel safe. Rest does not feel productive. Slowing down feels uncomfortable. And when something goes wrong, even something small, their body reacts as though it is one more threat they have to deal with. That is survival mode. It's not simply being busy. It's not simply having stress in your life. It's when your nervous system begins operating as though you constantly need to protect yourself, solve the next problem, prepare for the next problem, or get through the next thing. And if you live that way enough, it can begin to feel normal. And you may not even realize how much tension you're carrying until something forces you to stop. So today, I want you to recognize what survival mode actually is and why your brain and body can get stuck there, and how it affects your health and behavior, and most importantly, how you can begin to move out of it. Because the goal is not to create a life where nothing ever happens. The goal is to build a nervous system that knows the difference between a real emergency and simply being alive. So, what is survival mode really? At its core, survival mode is your nervous system doing what it was designed to do, to protect you. Your brain is constantly scanning your environment and asking one basic question: am I safe? Most of the time, that question is happening outside of your conscious awareness. And you're not walking around thinking, is this person safe? Is this room safe? Is this conversation safe? Or is this situation safe? But your nervous system is still gathering information. It's noticing tone of voice, facial expressions, body language, changes in your environment, memories, stress, fatigue, pain, uncertainty. And based on all that information, your brain makes a decision about whether you're safe enough to relax or whether you need to protect yourself. When your brain perceives a threat, your body can shift into a protective state. And that means that your heart rate increases, your muscles tense, your breathing changes, your attention narrows, your body becomes alert. Stress hormones are released. Energy is redirected towards what your body believes is most important in that moment. And again, this is not a bad system. It's a brilliant system. If you're walking through a parking lot at night and someone starts running towards you, you don't want to stop and calmly analyze every possible explanation. You want your body to react, and you'll want speed, strength, and focus. You want to prioritize your brain to move into survival mode. And that's exactly what this system does. The problem is that your nervous system does not only respond to physical danger, it can also respond to emotional danger, social danger, uncertainty, conflict, rejection, pressure, loss of control, memories of things that happened in the past. And sometimes your body can react to those things with some basic protective systems it would for physical danger. And that's why you can be sitting completely still in your living room and your heart can be pounding because of a text message. There is no tiger in the room, there's no fire, and you're probably not running from anything. But your body may still be reacting as though something important is happening and you still need to protect yourself. Now, in a healthy nervous system, that activation is temporary. Something happens, your body responds, the situation resolves, and then your body begins returning towards baseline. Your breathing will slow down, your muscles then will relax, your heart rate comes down again, and you begin to feel safe. That ability to move towards activation and recovery is incredibly important because regulation does not mean you are calm all the time. That's not realistic. Regulation means your nervous system is flexible and it can activate when activation is needed, and it can settle when the threat has passed. Survival mode happens when that flexibility begins to disappear. And instead of moving into a protective state and then returning to baseline, your body starts spending more and more time in protection. And maybe you're not a 10 out of 10 all day long. Maybe you don't feel panicked. But instead of fully relaxing, your nervous system may stay a 4 out of 5. Always a little alert, always a little tense, waiting for the next problem. And after enough time, that state can start to feel normal. And you may not think, I'm not in survival mode. You may think, this is just who I am. I'm just a warrior. I've always been high strung. I'm really just driven. I don't know how to relax. I have to stay busy. I'm just bad at resting. I like being productive. And sometimes those things might be true. But sometimes what we call a personality trait is actually a nervous system pattern that developed over time. And maybe you learned at a very early age that being kept prepared will keep you safe. Maybe you learned that making everyone happy prevented conflict. And maybe you learned that achievement brought approval. Maybe you learned that mistakes had consequences. Maybe you learned that you had to pay attention to other people's moods because you never knew what version of them you were going to get. Maybe you learned that asking for help wasn't safe. Maybe you learned that your needs come last. Maybe you learned that the best way to survive was to stay busy, stay useful, stay quiet, stay perfect, stay strong, or stay invisible. Those patterns may have worked. That's important. Your nervous system does not have to create these responses because it's broken. It creates them because at some point they made sense. They protected you and they helped you adapt. They helped you get through something. The problem is that a strategy that protects you in one season can become exhausting when you continue to use it long after the original danger is gone. Imagine wearing a heavy winter coat because once you lived somewhere freezing. That coat helped you stay alive and it was useful. But when you move somewhere warm and you continue wearing it every day, eventually that thing that once protected you starts to create a new problem. And that's how I want you to think about survival patterns. Don't immediately judge them. Get curious about them. And then instead of asking, what's wrong with me? Ask, what did my brain learn it needed to do to keep me safe? That question creates a completely different kind of awareness. Because once you understand that survival mode is a protective response, you can stop fighting yourself and start teaching your nervous system something new. And one of the most important things to understand is that your nervous system learns through repetition. If your life repeatedly teaches your brain, there's always another emergency, there's never enough time, I have to stay ready, I can't let my guard down, I have to handle everything, then your body gets very good at staying activated. But the opposite is also true. Your nervous system can learn, I can handle discomfort without being in danger. I can rest and still be responsible. I can say no and still be okay. I can ask for help. I do not have to solve everything immediately. I can feel an emotion without letting it control what I do next. I'm allowed to slow down. I can be safe even when everything is not perfect. That is the work. Getting out of survival mode is not simply telling yourself to calm down. It's repeatedly giving your brain and body new experiences that teach. You don't have to protect me from everything. So now let's talk about the 4 common ways survival mode can show up. Fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Most people have heard of at least some of these terms, but I want to make them practical because survival mode does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like anger, sometimes it looks like overworking, sometimes it looks like shutting down, sometimes it looks like people pleasing, and sometimes that the same person can move through all 4 depending on the situation. So let's start with fight. Fight mode is the part of your nervous system that says, I need to protect myself by pushing back. That can look like irritability, defensiveness, arguing, getting angry quickly, feeling like you have to prove your point, feeling like someone is trying to control you, feeling intensely frustrated when they don't go the way you expected. Sometimes fight mode is obvious. Someone's yelling, slamming doors, getting aggressive. But sometimes fight mode is much quieter. It can look like being internally irritated all day long. It can look like constantly correcting people. It can look like feeling the need to control every detail because uncertainty feels safe. It can look like becoming very rigid. And like, this is how it has to be. And this is how they should do it. And this is what needs to happen. And when something disrupts that plan, the reaction is much bigger than the situation might seem to require. And that does not automatically mean someone is controlling or difficult. Sometimes it means that their nervous system has learned that control creates safety. If I can control the plan, I can control the outcome. If I can control the outcome, maybe I can prevent something bad from happening. That can be survival mode. Then there is flight. Flight mode says, I need to stay ahead of the danger. And this survival response often gets rewarded in our culture because it can look like we're incredibly productive. Flight can look like constant working, always moving, always planning, always accomplishing, always thinking about the next goal, always having another project, always trying to improve something. But again, none of these things are bad because being motivated is not bad. Having goals isn't bad. Working hard isn't bad. But the question is, can you stop? Can you sit down without feeling guilty? Can you take a day off without mentally making a list of everything you should be doing? Can you enjoy something without thinking about how to make it productive? Can you go on vacation and actually be on vacation? Can you rest without feeling like you have to earn it first? Because there's a difference between being driven and being unable to stop driving yourself. Flight mode can also look like avoidance. You stay so busy that you don't have to feel. You keep adding things to your calendar. You exercise, work, organize, clean, scroll, listen to something constantly, and you stay in motion because when the moment everything gets quiet, emotions start to come up that you'd rather not deal with. Sometimes busyness is ambition, and sometimes busyness is avoidance, and sometimes it's both. And then we have freeze. Freeze mode is very different. Freeze says, I cannot fight this, I cannot outrun this, so I'm just going to shut down. This can look like procrastination, feeling completely overwhelmed by simple tasks, looking at everything you need to do and then doing none of it, not responding to messages, not making decisions, wanting to stay in bed, feeling numb, feeling disconnected, scrolling endlessly without enjoying what you're even looking at. You know you should get up. You know you should do something. And you might even be yelling at yourself internally. Come on, get moving. What's wrong with you? Why can't you just do this? But the pressure you put on yourself makes you feel even more stuck. That can be freeze. And this is where people often label themselves as lazy. But laziness and nervous system shutdown are not the same thing. If your brain perceives that these demands in front of you are greater than your ability to deal with them, sometimes it does not mobilize more energy. Sometimes it conserves energy and it shuts things down. That can be incredibly frustrating because intellectually, you may know exactly what you need to do, and you may know that the workout might make you feel better, and you know that you need to answer the email, and you know that you need to make the appointment, and still you feel like you can't start. That's why shame is usually not an effective solution. Calling yourself lazy does not create safety. It adds another threat. Now we're going to look at Fawn. Fawn is the survival response saying, I stay safe by keeping everyone else happy. This is people pleasing. And it says yes when you want to say no. It's apologizing when you didn't do anything wrong. It's constantly checking, are you upset with me? Did I do something wrong? Are we okay? It's managing everyone else's emotions. It's changing yourself depending on who you are around. It's avoiding conflict at almost any cost. It's like having a hard time identifying what you actually want because you're so used to asking what everyone else needs. And just like other survival responses, this pattern often makes sense when we understand where it all came from. Maybe keeping a parent happy made your childhood easier. Maybe conflict in your home felt unpredictable. Maybe that you learned that approval meant safety. Maybe being helpful got you love. Maybe disagreeing with someone came with consequences. So your nervous system learned, if everyone around me is okay, then I'm okay. And that might have helped you survive emotionally, but as an adult, it can become exhausting because now your peace depends on everyone else's mood. And that means that you are constantly scanning. Did I say the wrong thing? Did they sound different? Was that text shorter than usual? Are they mad? Should I fix it? Should I apologize? Should I do something to make them happy again? That's an enormous amount of mental energy. And one thing I really want to emphasize is that responses are not personally defects. Fight does not mean that you're a bad person. Flight does not mean you're obsessed with productivity. Freeze does not mean that you're lazy. Fawn does not mean that you're weak. They are protective responses. The goal is not to judge them. The goal is just to recognize them. Because once you identify the response, you have a better chance of choosing what you want to do instead. You can start noticing, oh, I'm in fight right now. I'm trying to control this because I feel unsafe. Or I'm in flight. I'm adding another task because I do not want to sit with what I'm feeling. Or I'm freezing because I'm overwhelmed and I'm attacking myself and it's making it worse. Or I'm fawning because I'm about to say yes because I'm afraid of disappointing someone. That moment of awareness is incredibly important because between automatic survival response and the behavior that follows, we might want to begin creating a little more space. Not necessarily a huge amount of space, but sometimes just enough to ask, what is actually happening right now? Am I in danger or am I uncomfortable? Those are not the same thing. And for many people who've spent years in survival mode, discomfort starts to feel like danger. Someone disagrees with you, danger. Someone is disappointed in you, danger. You make a mistake, danger. You do not know what's going to happen, danger. You sit still, danger. You say no, danger. But one of the ways that we begin to get out of survival mode is teaching the nervous system that discomfort is not always danger. And it can become uncomfortable and still be safe. Someone can disagree with me and I can still be safe. Someone can be disappointed with me and I can still be safe. I can make a mistake and still be okay. I can rest and nothing terrible has to happen. I can let someone else solve their own problem. I can feel angry without attacking. I can feel afraid without running. I can feel overwhelmed without shutting down completely. I can care about someone without taking responsibility for every emotion they have. And the more that we can practice that, the more flexibility we begin to create. Because the goal is not to eliminate fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Those responses exist for a reason. The goal is to stop letting them run our lives and when we are no longer in actual danger. Now, let's talk about how survival mode starts showing up in everyday life because this is where a lot of people miss it. They think survival mode should feel dramatic. They think they should feel panicked, or they think they know that they're overwhelmed. That's when they're in survival mode. But a lot of times, survival mode looks like normal life. It looks like being exhausted but unable to slow down. It looks like snapping at people that you love and then wondering why you reacted so strongly. It looks like needing noise all the time because silence feels uncomfortable. It looks like checking your phone every few minutes, even when there's nothing important happening. It looks like thinking about what still needs to be done. It starts to feel like you're behind before the day even starts. It looks like being physically tired but mentally wired. It looks like saying, I'm fine, while your body is clearly telling you otherwise. And one of the biggest ways survival mode shows up is through urgency. Everything feels urgent. Your email, your text, your laundry, your workout, your problem at work, the decision that you need to make feels urgent. And then the thing somebody else wants from you feels urgent. And when everything feels that way, your nervous system never gets the message that it is allowed to settle. You're always responding, always reacting, solving, anticipating, and it eventually starts affecting your health. It can affect your sleep. When you lie down at night, but your brain starts reviewing the day, like, what did I forget? What do I need to do tomorrow? What did that person mean? What if this happens? What if it doesn't work out? And even if you fall asleep, you might wake in the middle of the night already thinking. Then the next day starts with less recovery than you needed. And that can affect your energy, your patience, your hunger, your cravings, your workouts, and the way that you respond to stress. And then you are carrying yesterday's stress into today. Survival mode can also show up in your relationship with food. For some people, stress makes them eat more. Some people crave highly rewarding foods, such as processed food and sugar. Some people become more rigid and controlling with food because control feels safe. And they start to think, if I can just control what I eat, maybe I can control something. And that's important because sometimes what looks like a food problem is really a nervous system problem. And that's showing it up through the food. The same thing can happen with exercise. Some people stop moving completely because they feel overwhelmed. Others go in the opposite direction by training harder, adding more workouts because they feel guilty if they missed a day. And then they use exercise to burn off anxiety. Again, movement's not really the problem. Exercise is not the problem. The question is, what is driving the behavior? Am I moving because it supports my health, or am I moving because I feel like I can't stop? If I'm exercising because I enjoy it and want to get stronger, or am I exercising because rest makes me feel guilty? That distinction matters. Survival mode can also show up in decision making. When your nervous system is overloaded, even small choices can feel exhausting. What should I eat? What should I wear? Should I answer that message? Should I go to this event? Should I work out? Should I cancel? Should I say something or should I let it go? And sometimes you become so mentally tired that you either avoid a decision completely or you make the fastest decision just to make the discomfort stop. That's not because you are incapable. It's because your brain is using energy to stay alert. And that leaves less capacity for decision making. Survival can also affect your relationships. You might become more reactive, more defensive, more sensitive to a tone, more likely to assume something's wrong. You might read into messages. You may feel rejected quickly. You might take things personally that you might normally brush off, or you just might withdraw. Stop answering, stop explaining, stop engaging because connection feels like one more demand. And sometimes people around you don't understand. They think, why is she acting like this? But you may not even understand it yourself. You might just know that everything feels like too much. That's the thing about survival mode. It changes how much capacity that you have. A situation that you could have easily handled when you are well rested and grounded can feel enormous when you're depleted. Think about carrying groceries. If you're carrying one bag, someone handing you one more item might not be a big deal. But if both arms are already full, that one extra thing suddenly feels impossible. This item is not necessarily heavier, you simply have no margin left. And that is what survival mode can feel like. No margin, no room for one more thing. And when there's no margin, people often start losing access to the habits that normally help them. They stop walking, they stop planning meals, they stop going to bed on time, and they stop reaching out to supportive people. They stop doing little things that help them feel grounded. Not because those things stop working, but because even healthy habits can feel like one more thing on the list when you are overwhelmed. And this is why I don't want people to respond to survival mode by simply adding more demands. Sometimes the answer is not another checklist. Sometimes the answer is reducing the load enough so that you can actually use the tools you already know. Survival mode can make you feel emotionally flat. This surprises people. They think survival mode should make you feel anxious or intense. But sometimes it does not look like feeling much at all. You're not excited. You're not especially sad. And you're just getting through the day. You wake up, you work, you handle your responsibilities, and then you go to bed. Repeat. Things that you normally enjoy don't feel as enjoyable. And you stop looking forward to things. And you tell yourself, I just need to get through this week. Then the next week comes and you say the same thing. I just need to get through this month. Then the month passes. And suddenly you realize you've been living your whole life like something you're trying to survive instead of something you're actually experiencing or enjoying. And that's a huge warning sign because your life is not supposed to be one long waiting room for the moment when everything finally settles down. Because there's always going to be something. There's always going to be a deadline, a problem, a responsibility, uncertainty. And if you wait until life becomes completely calm before you allow yourself to feel okay, you may wait forever. And that's why getting out of survival mode cannot depend entirely on circumstances changing. Sometimes circumstances don't need to change. A toxic environment might need to change. A boundary might need to be set. A responsibility might need to be shifted or removed. But there also has to be an internal shift. You have to begin teaching yourself, I can experience less stress without turning my entire life into an emergency. I can have unfinished tasks and still rest. I can have uncertainty and still be present. I can have problems and still experience joy. I can be responsible without constantly being activated. And that's what we're really moving towards. Not a life without stress, a life where stress no longer controls every decision, every thought, every relationship, and every moment of your day. So, why survival mode can become your default even after an original stressor is gone? One of the most important things to understand is that your nervous system learns through repetition. If something happens once, your body may react strongly and then recover. But if that same kind of stress happens over and over again, your brain starts learning the pattern. It starts anticipating, it starts preparing, and it starts saying, we know how this goes. And sometimes it means your body begins reacting before anything has even happened. You wake up already tense because you know the day is going to be busy. You see a certain person's name pop up on your phone, and your body reacts before you even read the message. You walk into a room and immediately start scanning everyone's mood. You start mentally rehearsing conversations that haven't even happened yet. You start preparing for problems that may never come. And this is what anticipation can do. Your brain is trying to protect you by getting ahead of the threat. But if that becomes your normal pattern, you can spend huge amounts of energy responding to things that may have never happened. And this is where survival mode can become self-reinforcing. You expect stress. Your body prepares for stress. And because your body's activated, you determine and interpret things as stressful. And then your reaction confirms this belief. See, everything is stressful. And then the cycle continues. Another reason people get stuck in survival mode is because the brain loves familiarity. Not necessarily what's healthy or peaceful or good for us, but what's familiar. If chaos is familiar, calm can feel strange. If being busy is familiar, rest can be uncomfortable. And if conflict is familiar, peace can feel suspicious. And if you've spent years waiting for the next bad thing to happen, a quiet season may not immediately feel relaxing. Sometimes it feels like, what am I missing? When is something good going to go wrong? This feels too good. And then people unconsciously create activity, worry, conflict, or pressure because activation feels more familiar than peace. That does not mean that they want bad things to happen. It means the nervous system has gotten very good at functioning in one state. Think about somebody who has worked in a loud environment for years. At first, the noise may feel overwhelming, and eventually they barely notice it. Then they go somewhere completely quiet and the silence feels uncomfortable. The silence isn't dangerous, it's simply unfamiliar. The same thing can happen internally. You can become so accustomed to urgency that calm feels unnatural. Another reason we can get stuck in survival mode is because certain survival behaviors get rewarded. Thinking about overworking, you stay late, answer every message, extra responsibility is taken on, and you never say no. And people say, "You're amazing. I don't know how you do everything. You're so dependable and such a hard worker." That feels good. And now the nervous system behavior gets reinforced socially. You may actually receive praise for ignoring your own limits. Or think about people pleasing. You learn how to anticipate what everyone needs. You make people comfortable. You avoid conflict. Everyone says, "You're so easygoing, and you're always there for everybody. You're so selfless." But nobody sees the cost. You may be exhausted, resentful, disconnected from what you actually want, afraid to disappoint anyone. And because the behavior is rewarded, it becomes harder to recognize it as a survival strategy. Sometimes that pattern hurts us, and those are the ones that everyone else compliments. And that's why we have to look at what's actually happening to us internally, not only how the behavior looks from the outside. Another reason survival mode can persist is because of unresolved experiences from the past. And I want to be careful here. This does not mean every stressful reaction is a trauma. It does not mean everything has to be traced back to childhood, because our past experiences absolutely shapes what our brain learns to expect. If something happening today reminds your brain of something that happened years ago, your body can react to both at the same time. Maybe someone uses a certain tone of voice, or someone pulls away emotionally, or you feel criticized. Maybe you feel ignored. Maybe you don't know what's going to happen next. The current event might be relatively small, but if it connects with an older experience, your reaction may feel much bigger. And sometimes you think, why am I reacting this strongly? Because your body is not only responding to this moment, but it might be responding to what the moment represents. And that's why awareness matters. You cannot change a pattern that you can't see. Another reason people stay in survival mode is because they never fully recover between stressors. And this is huge. Imagine that your stress level goes from 0 to 8. Then the stressful events end, but you come back down to a 5. Then something else happens and you go from a 5 to a 9. You recover a little and come back to 6. Sometimes something else happens and you're back at a 9. Eventually your baseline has changed. You may not feel acutely stressed anymore because you've adapted to functioning at a 6. But your body is still carrying tension. And this is why small recovery practices matter. Because the goal is not to survive each stressor. We also need to come back down. And we need moments where the body gets the message that this is over. You can release this. You do not need to stay ready. Without that, we can carry one situation into the next. And then we start reacting to today's stress, and with yesterday's stress still sitting underneath of it. And another reason survival mode can persist is because people confuse constant activation with responsibility. They believe, if I stop worrying, something's going to go wrong. If I relax, I'm going to forget something. If I am not thinking about the problem, I'm being irresponsible. If I don't stay on top of everyone, everything's going to fall apart. This belief is incredibly powerful because now worry feels productive. Hypervigilance feels responsible. Control feels necessary. and the rest feels dangerous. But working about a problem is not the same as solving the problem. Thinking about something repeatedly is not always productive. Sometimes it just is rehearsing for the same fear. And there's a difference between preparation and preoccupation. Preparation says, what can I do about this? Whereas preoccupation says, what if, what if, what if? One moves you towards action, and the other keeps your nervous system activated without creating a solution. Another reason we get stuck is because we don't trust ourselves to handle what happens next. And this is important. Sometimes the nervous system is not trying to guarantee that nothing bad ever happens. It's trying to avoid the feeling, I won't be capable to handle this if something does. And so we try to control everything. We try to control people, our schedule, the future, food, our body, our environment. Because if we can control all these variables, maybe we'll never have to find out whether we can cope with something unexpected. But getting out of survival mode requires being a different person with a different belief. Not, nothing bad will ever happen. That would be untrue. But if something difficult happens, I trust myself to respond. That creates a very different kind of safety. Safety is not always certainty. Sometimes safety is confidence in your own ability to cope. I may not know exactly what's going to happen, but I can deal with what comes. I can ask for help, make another decision, set a boundary, change course. I can survive discomfort. I can recover. That is resilience. And resilience is very different from hypervigilance. Hypervigilance says, I have to prevent everything. Resilience says, I don't have to prevent everything because I trust myself to respond. That shift is enormous. Another thing that we can do that keeps us stuck is identity. Sometimes we've lived in survival mode for so long that it becomes how we define ourselves. I'm the strong one, the responsible one, the person everyone calls, the one who gets things done. I do not need help. I never quit. And again, those are wonderful qualities. Strength is good. Responsibility is good. Persistence is good. But what happens when your identity does not leave room for vulnerability? What happens when I'm strong becomes I'm never allowed to struggle? What happens when I'm dependable becomes I can never say no? What happens when I'm independent becomes I cannot ask anyone for help? What happens when I do not quit becomes I'm not allowed to rest? Then strengths can become cages. Getting out of survival mode means expanding your identity. I can be strong and receive support. I can be responsible and have limits. I can be hardworking and rest. I can be independent and still need people. I can be resilient and still feel emotions. I can be committed and still change my mind when something is no longer healthy. That's not becoming weaker. That's becoming flexible. And flexibility is one of the signs of a regulated nervous system. There is one more reason people can stay stuck in survival mode that I think we need to talk about. Sometimes there's a real source of stress in the environment, and we cannot regulate our way out of every situation. If someone's living in ongoing abuse, serious instability, constant conflict, unsafe working conditions, or another genuinely threatening environment, telling that person to breathe more deeply is not enough. Sometimes the environment needs to change. Sometimes the boundary needs to be stronger. Sometimes help is needed. Sometimes a relationship needs to be reevaluated. And sometimes the workload is actually unsustainable. Sometimes the solution is not learning how to tolerate more. The solution is changing what you're tolerating. And that distinction matters. Because the goal of a nervous system regulation is not to teach you comfortably to endure everything. It's to help you to respond appropriately. Sometimes the appropriate response is calming yourself. Sometimes it's taking action. Sometimes it's leaving. Sometimes it's speaking up. Sometimes it's asking for help. Sometimes it's saying, this cannot continue. So if you recognize yourself in survival mode, I don't want you to immediately ask, how do I force myself to calm down? I want you to ask, what is keeping my nervous system convinced that it needs to stay here? Is it an old pattern? Is it current stress? Is it a lack of recovery? Is it perfectionism? Is it a fear of disappointing someone? Is it an environment that actually needs to change? Is it a belief that you have to control everything? Is it a belief that resting makes you weak? Is it that calm simply feels unfamiliar? Because when you understand what is maintaining the pattern, you can stop treating survival mode like a character flaw and start working with a real cause. And that leads us to the most important part of this entire conversation. How do we actually start getting out of it? How do we actually start getting out of survival mode? And I want to start by saying this very clearly. You do not get out of survival mode by demanding that your body stop being stressed. You do not get out of survival mode by telling yourself to calm down, stop overreacting. Why are you acting like this? Just get over it. That usually adds more pressure to a system that already feels pressured. Getting out of survival mode is not about forcing yourself into the calm. It's about creating enough safety, enough recovery, and enough repetition that your nervous system begins to learn a new pattern. Think about it this way. If your brain has spent years learning that I have to stay alert, I have to handle everything, I can't slow down, I have to keep everyone happy, I have to be prepared, then one quiet evening is not going to erase that pattern. One deep breath is not going to undo years of conditioning. One day off is not going to completely reset your nervous system. But that does not mean small practices do not work. It means they work through repetition. The same way survival mode was learned over time, safety can be learned over time too. So the first thing I want you to do is to stop expecting a dramatic transformation. Look for small shifts. Can you notice activation a little earlier? Can you interrupt one reaction? Can you sit down for 10 minutes without feeling like you have to get back up? Can you say no to one thing you normally would have said yes to? Can you leave one message unanswered till later? Can you take one walk without turning it into a productivity task? Those things might sound small, but small is where the nervous system change begins. The first practical step is awareness. You have to start noticing when your body is moving into survival mode. What are your signs? Do your shoulders tense? Do you clench your jaw? Does your heart start racing? Do you get impatient? Do you start walking faster? Do you feel the urge to fix everything immediately? Did you reach your phone? Did you start mentally rehearsing an argument? Did you shut down? Do you want to avoid everybody? Did you start saying yes to the things you don't want to do? Do you feel an urge to eat even though you're not physically hungry? Do you start adding more work to your plate? Those signals matter because the earlier you notice the pattern, the easier it is to intervene. If you don't recognize survival mode until you're completely overwhelmed, your options are more limited. But if you can recognize it when it's beginning, you can make a different choice. And you might just simply say to yourself, I'm getting activated. Not, this is terrible. Not, I can't handle this. Just, I am getting activated. That language matters because it describes what's happening without turning it into another emergency. So then you ask yourself, what's the actual threat right now? This is one of my favorite questions. What's the actual threat? Because sometimes there is one, and sometimes there's a real thing that needs action. But sometimes the answer is there isn't an actual threat. I'm just uncomfortable. And maybe somebody's disappointed. Maybe you received criticism. Maybe something didn't go according to plan. Maybe you're running behind. Maybe someone didn't text you back, and maybe you made a mistake. Those things can feel uncomfortable, but discomfort and danger are not the same thing. That distinction is incredibly important because your nervous system treats every uncomfortable experience like danger. And then, if it does, you will spend your life trying to eliminate discomfort. And that's impossible. You can't control whether someone disagrees with you. You can't control whether someone's disappointed. You cannot control every outcome or prevent every mistake. You can't guarantee that everyone's going to approve of you. So one of these skills that we need is to learn to stay present with discomfort without immediately launching into a survival response. You can feel uncomfortable and still choose your next behavior. You can feel disappointed and still feel okay. You can be criticized and take time before responding. You can feel anxious and still make a thoughtful decision. You can feel the urge to people please and still say no. That is regulation. Regulation does not mean you have to stop having emotions. It means your emotions are no longer automatically dictating your behavior. The second practical step is slowing the body down. And remember, survival mode is not only happening in your thoughts, it's happening in your physiology. So sometimes thinking your way out of it is not good enough. We need to actually work with the body. So one tool is by using breathing. So when you're stressed, your breathing will become faster and shallower. So intentionally slowing your breathing, especially your exhale, can be one way to send your body a different signal. You don't need a complicating breathing protocol. You can just simply slow down. Take a comfortable breath in, and then make the exhale a little longer. And then do it again. A slower exhale can help shift your body towards a calmer state. And again, this isn't magic. This isn't, oh, I took 3 breaths, therefore my entire nervous system's healed. It's simply one piece of information you're giving your body. We do not have to sprint right now. Another tool is movement. And I don't necessarily mean a hard workout, but sometimes when people are activated, their body has energy that needs to go somewhere. So a walk can help, stretching can help, going outside can help. Sometimes you might need a sprint or some push-ups to make your body a little more exerted. But just moving your body in general can help you transition out of sitting and mental stress. There's a reason people often say they need to walk it off. Sometimes movement helps the body complete a stress response. And I think walking is one of the most underrated tools that we have. You can walk without measuring anything. You don't have to track your pace or count your calories or turn it into exercise. You can just move. Another practical step is orienting to the present. Survival mode often pulls us to the past or the future. So we're replaying something that happened, or we might be imagining something that might happen. And meanwhile, our body is reacting to the present moment. So bring yourself back to where you actually are. Look around your room, notice what you see. Notice your feet on the floor and your chair underneath you. Notice the temperature and the sounds, and remind yourself, I am here, this is now, and this moment is different from what happened before. That can be especially useful when a current situation is activating an old pattern. Maybe someone's tone reminds you of something from the past. Your nervous system says, we know this is danger. Orienting helps you recognize this is not then, this is now. I have choices now that I might have had before. And this is powerful because another major part of getting out of survival mode is creating recovery on purpose. This is where people sometimes make a mistake. They wait until they're completely exhausted before they let themselves recover. Recovery becomes something that you earn after you've done everything else. But if recovery only happens after you complete things, you will be depleted and you're always trying to climb out of a hole. What if recovery became part of your plan? What if rest was not the reward for finishing everything? Because let's be honest, when is everything actually finished? There will always be something else, and it'll always be waiting for you. So recovery has to happen while life is still happening. And maybe that means protecting your sleep. Maybe that means going to bed 30 minutes earlier, or not taking your phone to bed. And maybe it means creating a transition after work. You finish your work, and instead of immediately jumping to the next responsibility, you take 10 minutes. You walk outside, maybe you change your clothes, sit quietly, pray, take a shower. Do something that tells your nervous system that part of the day is over. Transitions matter. A lot of people move from one role to another without any transitioning, such as work, parenting, housework, exercise, emails, and bed. The nervous system never gets a clear signal that one demand has ended before another begins. Small transitions can create physiological and psychological separation. Another critical tool is sleep. You can use every stress management technique in the world, but if you're consistently sleep deprived, regulation is going to be harder. Sleep gives the brain and body a chance to recover. And when you're exhausted, everything tends to feel bigger, and your patience gets shorter, your decision making becomes harder, your cravings may become stronger, and your emotional threshold drops. So sometimes getting out of survival mode starts with something as unexciting as, I just need to go to bed. Not another supplement or another hack, just plain old sleep. And if sleep itself is difficult because you're stressed, work on the environment around sleep. Create a wind down routine, reduce stimulation, turn things off. Give your brain time to transition. Do not expect yourself to go from answering stressful emails to unconscious in 3 minutes. The brain doesn't work that way. And another major part of leaving survival mode is learning boundaries. And for some people, that's the hardest part. Because if your survival pattern is fawn, boundaries can initially feel unsafe. Saying no may make your heart race. Not fixing someone else's problems might make you feel guilty. Allowing someone to be disappointment might feel unbearable. But boundaries are one of the ways that you can teach your nervous system that I am allowed to protect my energy. I do not have to say yes to everything, and I'm not responsible for everybody else's emotions. That doesn't mean that we're selfish. It means that we become responsible for what is actually ours. And you can care deeply about somebody without taking ownership of everything they feel. You can support someone without rescuing them. You can love someone and still say no. I cannot do that. That does not work for me. I need time to think. I'm not available tonight. And yes, sometimes people might be disappointed. And that's where the work becomes real. Can you tolerate someone else's disappointment without immediately abandoning your boundary? That's a huge step out of survival mode. Because when your safety no longer depends on keeping everyone happy, you regain enormous amounts of energy. Another step is reducing unnecessary urgency. Before you respond to something, ask, does this actually need to happen right now? That question can change your day. Does this email need an immediate response? Does this problem have to be solved tonight? Does this decision need to be made in the next 5 minutes? Do I need to fix a phone call? Do I need to fix this for someone? Or does my nervous system want resolution because uncertainty feels uncomfortable? Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is wait. Let yourself think. Let the emotion settle. Respond tomorrow. Not everything deserves an immediate access from you. Another powerful shift is changing the way you speak to yourself. If your internal voice sounds like a threatening person, then your nervous system never gets a break. Think about language people use with themselves. You're stupid. You're so messed up. You need to get it together. You're lazy. You're failing. What's wrong with you? Imagine somebody following you around all day long saying those things out loud. Would your nervous system feel safe? Of course it wouldn't. Because sometimes when we do that internally, then we wonder why we can't calm down. Self-compassion is not letting yourself off the hook. It's not pretending mistakes don't matter. It's responding to yourself in a way that helps you recover and make another best decision. Instead of, I cannot believe I did that, try, that didn't go the way I wanted. What can I learn from it? Instead of saying, I'm so lazy, try, I'm feeling shut down. What's making me feel so overwhelmed? Instead of saying, I have to fix everybody today, try saying, what's the next important thing? That's very different in nervous system environment. Another thing that we can practice is receiving help. For people who have survived by being hyper independent, asking for help can feel threatening. You might think, I should be able to handle this myself. I don't want to burden anybody. It's easier if I just do it myself. And sometimes it's easier, but easier is not always healthier. If you teach yourself, I'm alone and I have to handle everything, then your nervous system believes you. And healthy connection is one of the signals of safety. Having people you trust, people that you can call, people that you don't have to perform around, people who can help carry something that matters. You're not weak because you need other people. Human beings are built for connection. And this brings me to something else I think that's important. You need moments in your life where you're not performing, you're not achieving or producing or proving, just being. And that might sound uncomfortable to some people. And if it does, pay attention to that. If you cannot imagine sitting for 10 minutes without accomplishing something, ask yourself why. What happens internally when you stop? Do you feel guilty, restless, worthless, anxious? Do you immediately think I should be doing something? That reaction is information. Sometimes survival mode becomes tied to worth. We learn I'm valuable when I'm useful. I'm worthy when I'm achieving. I'm safe when people need me. And if that's the belief, then rest does not only feel unproductive, it can feel like an identity threat. So part of getting out of survival mode may be learning my worth does not disappear when I stop producing. I do not have to earn the right to rest. I'm still valuable when I accomplish nothing. That can be deep work. Another practical tool is reducing stimulation. We live in an environment that can keep our nervous system constantly engaged with notifications, messages, news, social media, videos, podcasts, music, emails, screens. There's almost never silence unless we create it. And I love information and I love learning, but your brain also needs a space where it's not processing another input. Try diving in without listening to anything sometime. Try taking a walk without your phone. Sit outside. Let your thoughts settle. Boredom is not an emergency. Silence is not wasted time. You might discover that your brain starts processing things it didn't have space to process. Another tool is predictable routines. When the nervous system has been living in chaos, predictable routines can create safety. A consistent bedtime, morning routine, regular meals, scheduled movement, a weekly coaching call, a Sunday walk, prayer at a certain time, whatever works for you. The point is not rigid control. The point is creating areas of your life where your body knows what to expect. Because predictability can reduce the amount of mental energy required to constantly make decisions. And I want to include a prayer and faith here too, because for people, many people, spiritual practices are an important part of regulation. Prayer can be a place where you stop trying to control everything, where you acknowledge, I don't have to carry this all alone. And for someone who is constantly trying to predict and control the future, surrender can be incredibly powerful. Not a passive surrender and not a giving up responsibility, but recognizing your limits of control. There are things you can influence and things that you cannot. And learning the difference can free up enormous amounts of energy. Another practice is joy, and this gets overlooked. Because when we talk about reducing stress, what about intentionally adding experiences that tell your brain life is more than just surviving? Like laughing, playing, spending time with people you enjoy, doing something creative, going somewhere beautiful, dancing, listening to music. Do something simply because you like it, not because it burns calories, not because it advances your career, not because it checks something off your list. Joy isn't frivolous, and connection isn't frivolous. Play is not frivolous, and they're a part of being human. And when you spend a lot of time in survival mode, you may have to relearn how to enjoy things without immediately turning them into another goal. And finally, getting out of survival mode means building trust in yourself. And we talked about this earlier. You cannot guarantee that life's going to be easy, or that nobody will hurt you, or that nothing will go wrong. And you cannot control every outcome. So the deepest form of safety is not perfect control. It's knowing that whatever happens, I can trust myself to respond. I can make decisions, ask for help, change direction, survive disappointment, set boundaries, recover from mistakes. And I can feel emotions that are difficult without being destroyed by them. I do not have to prepare for every possible disaster because I trust the person I have become. And that's a very different way of living. And none of this happens overnight. You're going to have moments where you go right back into survival mode. You'll get triggered, overreact, say yes when you meant to say no. You'll worry or push too hard. But that doesn't mean the work is not working. The question is, do you notice it sooner? Do you recover faster? Do you make a different choice next time? That's progress, and that is winning. We're not trying to create a nervous system that never becomes activated. We're trying to build one that knows how to come home. I want to close this by bringing this back to something simple. Survival mode is not your identity. It's a pattern. It's a state your nervous system learned because at some point it was trying to help you. And if it was learned, it can be changed. Not instantly or perfectly, but gradually through awareness, repetition, support, boundaries, recovery, and new experiences. The goal is not to become a person who never gets stressed, because that's not realistic. The goal is to become a person who never gets triggered, because that's not realistic either. The goal is not to become someone who is perfect. It's someone who recognizes what is happening sooner, and someone who can say, I am activated right now. I'm slipping into fight. I'm slipping into flight. I'm freezing. I'm people pleasing. And then instead of automatically following that response, you create enough space to choose. And that's where your power is. It's not in controlling everything around you or preventing every uncomfortable emotion. It's not making sure everybody is never disappointed. It's not keeping your life perfectly organized. Your power is in your response. And you can pause before reacting. You can decide that not everything is urgent. You can let someone else resolve their own problem. You can say no. You can ask for help. You can rest before you're completely depleted. You can stop demanding perfection from yourself. You can choose to turn one difficult moment not into a difficult day. And I want you to think about how something different that your life could be if you stopped treating everything as something you had to survive. What if you stopped waking up thinking, what do I have to get through today? And you started asking, how do I want to experience my day? What if you stopped waiting for the next problem? And what if you stopped assuming that peace was temporary? What if you could enjoy something good without immediately wondering when it was going to disappear? What if you trusted yourself enough to know that even if something difficult happened, you can handle it when the time comes? That's a completely different way of living. And I think sometimes we spend too much time trying to create certainty that we actually miss the life that's actually going on right now. We are mentally living 3 days ahead, 3 months ahead, 3 years ahead, trying to predict, prepare, prevent. And meanwhile, the only moment we actually have is this one right now. And does that mean we stop planning? No. It does not mean we become irresponsible either. It means we stop asking the future to give us a guarantee that it can't give us. There will always be uncertainty, and there will always be things outside of our control. But you can build trust in yourself. You can build resilience, support, healthy routines, healthy boundaries. You can build a life that includes recovery. And over time, your nervous system begins to learn, I don't have to be ready for disaster every second of the day. I can be present. I can be safe and still have unfinished business. I can rest without losing control. I can let life unfold. I also want you to remember that getting out of survival mode does not mean becoming passive. It does mean tolerating situations that need to change. It does not mean ignoring problems. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is take action. Sometimes all you need to do is make a phone call, have a conversation, set a boundary, change a situation, leave something unhealthy, ask for professional help. Make decisions that you've been avoiding. Regulation is not about making yourself comfortable with everything. It's about becoming grounded enough to know the difference between a real problem that needs action and a nervous system that's reacting to discomfort as if it were a danger. That distinction changes everything because sometimes the answer is, I need to calm my body. And sometimes the answer is, I need to change the situation. Both can be true. So I want to give you something practical to do this week. I don't want you to notice survival mode. I don't judge it, just notice it. And when you feel yourself getting reactive, overwhelmed, shut down, controlling, overproductive, or overly focused on keeping everyone else happy, ask yourself, what survival response am I in now? Fight, flight, freeze, fawn? Then ask, what does my nervous system think it's protecting me from? Because that question might surprise you. Maybe it's rejection, conflict, failure, disappointment, loss of control, being misunderstood, being alone, not being good enough. Then ask, am I actually in danger right now, or am I just uncomfortable? And if the answer is discomfort, remind yourself, I can tolerate discomfort. I don't have to fix this right now. I don't have to make everybody happy. I don't have to know what happens next. I can handle this one moment at a time. And then choose one small action that moves you towards regulation. Take a break. Go for a walk. Slow down your breathing. Put down your phone. Go to bed earlier. Ask for help. Say no. Delay a response. Pray. Sit outside. Talk to someone safe. Eat a nourishing meal. Take one thing off your calendar. But I want you to keep it small because one of the easiest ways of turning healing into another form of survival mode is to decide, now what 12 things do I have to do perfectly to regulate my nervous system? No, just one thing, one different choice. The moment where you recognize the pattern and respond differently, that's just enough. You're teaching yourself that you have choices, that you can slow down, that you can handle this, and you don't have to automatically repeat your old patterns. And these moments build one by one. And eventually, the thing that used to trigger you for 3 days might affect you for 3 hours, and then maybe 30 minutes. The situation may not change, but you changed. Your capacity changed, your responses changed, and that's growth. And I think we need to celebrate that kind of progress more often because we tend to wait for some massive transformation before we give ourselves credit. But sometimes the transformation is, I noticed. I didn't send out an angry text. I said no. I rested. I asked for help. I didn't assume the worst. I allowed someone to be disappointed. I let something stay unfinished. I chose not to panic over the scale. I caught myself people pleasing. I recovered faster. Those are not small things. Those are things that you are allowed in survival mode to make every decision for you. And one final thing, you are allowed to enjoy your life while you are still working on it. You don't have to wait until your body is exactly where you want it. You don't have to wait till your finances are perfect or your relationships are perfect or your every problem is solved. You don't have to wait until your entire nervous system is perfectly regulated. You can experience joy now. You can have peace in the middle of uncertainty. You can be grateful and still want growth. You can have goals without living in constant pressure. You can work hard without believing that your worth depends on your performance. You can be strong without carrying everything alone. And you can be responsible without being responsible for everyone. You can care deeply without losing yourself, and you can build a life where you're doing more than just surviving. you're actually living. So the question where I want to leave you with this week is, where in your life are you acting as though you are in survival mode when you may no longer need to be? And then, what would it look like if I respond from safety instead? Maybe the answer is slowing down, speaking up, letting go, trusting yourself. Maybe it's finally getting support. But whatever it is, choose one step. Because getting out of survival mode is not one giant decision. It's hundreds of small decisions that tell your brain and body, I do not have to live like everything is an emergency anymore. If you recognized yourself in this episode, remember this. Survival may have helped you get through a difficult season, but it doesn't have to become the way you live the rest of your life. If you can stop carrying everything yourself, you can start to learn down without feeling guilty. You can build habits that support you instead of constantly running on empty. And you can stop asking, how do I get through this? And start asking, who am I becoming? And that's what the becoming method is all about. Helping you work on your health, mindset, habits, identity, and deeper patterns that might be keeping you stuck so you can actually move forward. And if you'd like to learn more about the Becoming Method or connect with me personally, you'll find all my contact information in the link in the show notes. And if this episode helped you, please take a second to like it and subscribe to Built Not Burnt Out and share it with somebody who might need this message today. Every like, subscription, and share helps this podcast reach another person who might be trying to find their way out of survival mode. Thank you for spending the time with me. And until next time, keep building the life that you don't have to recover from.